Good morning, and thank you for joining us here on KOTA Territory TV. I'm Tamara Chibi. Right now, candidate for Governor Larry Rhoden is hosting a town hall right now in Sioux Falls. It's relating to his run for governor. This comes just days after he announced his intent to run. Let's join that event, which is in progress as we speak.
And you'll excuse me a second, but my phone is ringing in my ear. Pat Trask. Something about that. Long story there. But we knew we'd be getting into session, and so we didn't want that confusion to take place. We wanted to keep this as clear as possible. But I've said many times, I know that this session is going to be unique when you have that many people running for governor, but I've said it many times, and I mean it sincerely, that good policy makes good politics. And so I'm not going to fret about the politics. I'm going to fret about coming forward with good policy. And we'll let the chips fall where they may. But it's another reason that I think that I'm uniquely qualified, the right guy for the job. You know, there are a lot of people that have different views on different things. But I think I've positioned myself in the last 25 years. I've learned a great deal about, you know, the world of politics, but more importantly, the legislative process and the state of South Dakota. Born and raised in South Dakota, never had any political ambitions, but we had a heart of service. We have a long history of military service in my family, going back to this Revolutionary War. A great-great-great-grandfather that came to the United States from France with General Lafayette, along with 4 brothers. During that war, 4 of his brothers perished, and he alone survived the war and made his new home in America. Grandfather that served in World War I fought in the Moose-Argonne offensive, the deadliest battle in the American history. Father that served in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. His company liberated Moshausen, one of the more notorious death camps. Had a son that flew Blackhawks in the Army National Guard, a brother that served in Vietnam, another brother that served in peacetime. But I say all that because we felt the call to serve our family in many different ways. I served in the National Guard for 6 years. But we served on committees and volunteered. I remember somebody asked me to run for the school board, so I did. Later on, somebody asked me to consider running for the legislature. And I thought, well, that's a good way to get off the school board. So I did that. And of course, I was a product of term limits when I got in, and so there was a void in leadership. And I thought, if I'm going to be in here, I want to have a seat at the table. So I ran for leadership. In 4 years, I was majority leader. That was a key point in my life because I learned so much about, you know, honing leadership skills and working with people. And a lot of what I learned growing up, just my values, I think I developed trust in my caucus, and we functioned very well. And it was, people talk about how the wider spectrum of our party. Well, that's not true. The Republican Party has always been a wide divide, a diversity of ideas, and the difference was we worked together as a unit, as a caucus, and we set our differences aside and we dialogued and we heard each other, and we agreed to an agenda that we could all get behind. And we agreed that we didn't tear each other up in public. That's kind of been lost. But it's not been lost with me. And that's why the first thing I announced in my inaugural address was that I was going to promote openness and civility. Because that's what we need in today's politics. The ability to dialogue with people and talk with them instead of at them. And I really felt that that's my biggest strength. And I think we've seen it in real time, like with the prison discussion. Because I was able to work across the aisles. We had a broad support from the minority party. And at a time when we've had the biggest divisions within our ranks as ever, coupled with 11th hour torpedo from the Speaker of the House, and then to overcome all that and get close to a 75% of the 70 members of the House of Representatives supported this, including 12 members who had already endorsed the Speaker of the House that tried to torpedo us, and also switched his votes and voted against. We still overcome all that, and that was because of our ability to communicate with all spectrums. And that's what I'll bring to the governor's office. And that's what my continuing goal will be. Civility, openness. I'm not hard to find. I was told when I first got to be governor, by an old friend of mine, said, well, being governor's lonely, because you'll spend all these hours, all the sessions going on, and you're stuck on the second floor in your office. And I said, well, after he'd said that about 2 or 3 times, I said, where's that written, that I have to stay in my office? Is there a rule? Is there a law? Is it in the Constitution? He said, well, no, but governor just doesn't go on the 3rd floor during session. Well, this governor might. And about twice a week, if I had the opportunity, I'd go to the 2nd floor, or the 3rd floor, just stop in and visit with legislators, visit with the lobbyists, visit with the citizens that are there to testify. And it's been very valuable, the insight that I gained, and the understanding. I've yammered on long enough, but I am very excited. It's been the honor of a lifetime to be governor of a state that I love so much. I've said to many people many times that the people of South Dakota are special. And I'm not talking about Special Olympics or something like that. But we truly are a different breed. And the more I've got around the United States, we do a lot of things right in South Dakota. And our citizen legislature is one of them. And if you go to here for 40 days, you pass the laws, then you go home and you live with them. And then you come back next year and fix what you got wrong. And so I also think it's just our heritage and our culture, the way that our state come about. I talk about the homesteaders all the time. I've done this a couple times. By a show of hands, how many in here had ancestors that were homesteaders in South Dakota? Pretty similar to the results I see all over the place. Well, they always talk about how tough the homesteaders were. Well, the fact of the matter is, most of them weren't. They weren't tough enough. Because most of them did survive the South Dakota prairies in the first winter or two. And those folks packed their bags and went back to where they came. It was only the toughest, the most resilient, the ones with the strongest work ethic and drive and grit that survived. And that became the fabric of the South Dakota we see today. So, I have been so excited to see the results and just see what can be accomplished in South Dakota just by getting out, listening to the people, talking to the business owners. You want a shot in the arm, go tour. We did the Open for Opportunity tour for, 3 months.
Probably
About 5 months. But we visit a business. It was a new business that had recently moved to South Dakota. Want a shot in the arm, talk to them. It was exciting to hear and see the excitement in them and just the joy of being in South Dakota compared to where they came from. And it kind of renews in you the realization that we take a lot of things for granted in South Dakota. So, thank you all for being here. Would love to take the time to answer questions.
So folks, if you'd raise your hand, I'll bring you the microphone and we'll get your questions answered.
Governor, I've been here about 4 years, and I was previous law enforcement on the West Coast. I lost my job to George Floyd and COVID, so I threw darts at the map and moved to South Dakota. I love it here. My biggest concern coming into South Dakota is, what did you call that law enforcement task force that you have?
Operation Prairie Thunder.
That is a great idea. I was thinking about talking to people about that previous, when I first got here. We have to saturate the streets here to keep crime from getting out of control. But once it gets out of control, it's over. That's what destroyed the West Coast and our cuckoo government out there. But that's a different story. But I appreciate it, as a newcomer.
Yeah, thank you. We've this last saturation patrol, we kind of took Operation Prairie Thunder on the road. The 7th saturation patrol, we were in Yankton and Belfus and Huron, and had some really good results there as well. We've done the previous 6 here in the Sioux Falls area. And Sioux Falls, like I said when we started that, when we had the press conference announcing that, Sioux Falls done a pretty good job of managing, they've had tremendous growth, yet they were still managing pretty well. But anytime you have that kind of growth, you're going to have more crime. And so I think it was a good time to do those saturation patrols, and we had some tremendous results. I was at the law enforcement appreciation dinner and met with the whole crew that was doing the Operation Prairie Thunder. They have a new thing. The bad guys kind of got wind of Operation Prairie Thunder, and they call it being prairie dog. If they get caught, talked to a couple bad guys that are going to jail and said, "Can't believe we got prairie dog." It's the opposite thing. And we'll continue to do that, and in the future, maybe go to other areas as need warrants.
Hi, Governor. I grew up out in western South Dakota, got married, moved to Iowa, lived there for 42 years, and moved back to South Dakota. Can you tell me, as someone that's been away that long and come back, what are the pressing issues that someone like me needs to be aware of? What's going on in South Dakota?
Well, it's hard to answer. The things that are most challenging South Dakota are challenging a lot of states. Workforce shortage. We've managed that pretty well, and businesses are still excited to come to South Dakota because we have the lowest unemployment in the nation. Set records for the lowest unemployment. But that only means that our people want to work, and so people really want to contribute and work, and people have been coming here in record numbers, and so that's been a growing pain, but I think we're navigating that better than most other states, and but far and away, our business climate, we are the second least regulated state in the nation, and we have got a form of government that wants to help businesses get started and then get out of the way. And I think that's been the biggest advantage of South Dakota. We are very business friendly.
Hi, Governor. Thank you for being here. You kind of touched on my question, but I wrote it, so I don't want to waste it. So, Governor Rhoden, a business leader recently said the following: South Dakota is a very hard place to do business because everything is oppositional. $2.6 billion biofuel plant is moving up to North Dakota instead of Lake Preston. The carbon pipeline was blocked. Here in Sioux Falls, there was a drive to block the modern meat processing facility, and then out in West River, there's currently opposition to the TIF for the new amusement park. I understand that the pork plant and the amusement park are local issues, but as governor, what policies can you implement to make South Dakota the most attractive state to do business in? And maybe more importantly, how can you convey a pro-business and pro-investment message to the state's residents?
Well, first of all, I think I've been very clear in my messaging that we are open for opportunity. And I understand, I appreciate your question, because a lot of that festers in the background. But a lot of that hasn't happened. The issue with the TIF out west, we have an issue in the state with some, we're, like I said, we are very diversified. We have some individuals with very distinct ideas, and kind of a very loud, small minority that are very outspoken, like on the TIF. And they're very anti-economic development. And so they get a lot of attention. But that should only serve as a wake-up call for us, and more so than the public officials, but for the members of our society to get engaged. Because that stuff happens, and we get people elected to office that are part of that crew because of apathy. And so it's a reminder for citizenry to get engaged and get active. And a lot of that stuff happens in our last primary. We had an extremely low voter turnout. There are no up-ticket races and whatnot. And so what tends to happen with low voter turnout is some really ticked off people are the only ones that vote. And I think we saw the results of some of that. But again, the answer to that is being engaged. And in my position, I will continue the messaging, and I will continue to remind people that South Dakota is open for opportunity, we're business friendly, and there's some of the specific cases that I'd talk one-on-one and kind of tell you that I think we were kind of a scapegoat on one in particular, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And I won't comment any further on that, because that's not productive for me to say anything other than the reality is that South Dakota is open for business, we're open for opportunity, and business will always be welcome in South Dakota.
Governor, a comment and a question. First, the comment, just thank you for your announcement last week on South Dakota opting into the federal tax credit scholarship program. You've talked in the past about just desiring strong public schools, but also desiring strong options for all families, whether they would want to choose a public school, a non-public school, homeschool, and heard others in your administration talk about the value of competition in sort of promoting an excellent educational environment. What do you see as sort of the future of educational choice policy at the state level in South Dakota?
Well, last year we had education savings account bill that the governor Noem had introduced, and I supported. It didn't live past the first committee hearing. So short term on issues like that, I don't know that they're going to make any changes in the near future. I think this was Trump's proposal was a great first step and great messaging in school choice to have that option and help our citizens make decisions on what they want to do and give them options. Yeah.
Yeah, and on that, I maybe just add a little, because we had this announcement in town on Friday, a week ago. And I think it's something that's not really that well known, but it was part of the One Big Beautiful Bill that passed in July. It is a new tax credit, so it's in the federal tax code, starting January 1, 2027, so for your 27 taxes. You can donate up to $1,700 a year to an approved scholarship granting organization, and you get a 100% credit back on your taxes. So it really doesn't cost you anything if you make the donation, you just have to claim it on your tax. Well, that law gives the governor the authority to decide whether to participate or not. Some of the Democratic governors around the country have said they're not going to. Governor Rhoden, I think we were the 4th state or 5th to say that we are going to. And he will also have the authority to designate which nonprofits are eligible to receive the donations that qualify for the credit. So the reason I want to mention that is this coming year we need to do planning now so that private schools, but even public schools probably have some uses that are eligible for this. There's no limit on how much money the state can get through this. The only limit is $1,700 per taxpayer, which is a lot of money. And it's money coming into the state that could come in, it could be tens of millions of dollars, coming into South Dakota for scholarship programs for kids to attend private school or to get more tutoring or homeschool supplies and various things. So the bill last year would have been state general funds, and that may still come back at some point. But in the meantime, this is a really big opportunity for a state like South Dakota. And so it was exciting to announce that last week.
You want to comment about how public schools are also eligible?
Oh yeah, because the question had come up, and we're still waiting on some of the federal regulations. But the way the law is written, there are some purposes for that money that can be used. Like if a public school has tutoring that has an extra charge, or there are certain things like that, textbooks, that a family can qualify for the scholarship funds to use in a public school too.
So you answered my first question, but I've read, probably misinformation, but some people are, more than one out there, saying something about kids with disabilities aren't going to benefit from this, and I don't understand, is there any, I don't think there's any truth to that, but I don't know why they would have that perception.
Yeah, I don't either. There's really not a tie between the two issues. In fact, there could be some services that are available to them that could be funded by the scholarship.
Next question, folks. And members of the media can feel free as well.
So obviously you're from West River. What's your pitch in front of an Eastern South Dakota crowd on what you can do to help them as governor?
Well, I think I would just say that it doesn't matter where I'm from. It's what I've done, who I represent. I've said that even when I was majority leader, I remember talking to a group of Sioux Falls businessmen, and I was still pretty green as grass, and I was pretty intimidated by being in front of 150 business owners from Sioux Falls. But it occurred to me, and it still holds true, that what benefits Sioux Falls, South Dakota, benefits Union Center, South Dakota, and we can divide our state up east versus west, but we all have we all play by the same rules. Sioux Falls. We talk about the fact when Christy and I were governor, lieutenant governor. We talk about the fact that we're both Aggies, and I said, yeah, ag's huge in South Dakota. Number one industry. Outpaces number two industry by like 7-1. But to me, all that magnifies is the fact that we need to diversify our economy in South Dakota. And Sioux Falls is the biggest economic engine outside of agriculture in the state. And so as Sioux Falls survives and prospers, our state does. And same with our ag industry. I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't realize the importance of the ag industry in South Dakota, regardless of what your situation is. So I represent the entire state. Spent a lot of time in Sioux Falls in the last 8 months, and that's why. If you're going to hunt elephants, you go where the elephants are.
Sir, we got a question right here, and then we have time for one more after this one.
Governor, I just want to say, when in regards to the packing plant incident, when we had the ballot initiative here, we appreciate your support in that and working with the relationship between the urban and the rural communities. We had some negative comments come out in the press yesterday regarding agriculture in South Dakota and the negative impact that we have on the environment. How do you feel you can address that, or what's your stance on that?
Well, yeah, I just read those comments literally when I was traveling here to Sioux Falls today. And I was disappointed. I would say that his remarks were extremely off the mark, and I was pretty disappointed that they would look at it that perspective, talking about how the ag industry needs to be more tightly regulated. Because nothing could be farther from the truth. And a lot of the stuff he was saying was misinformation. I don't think he consulted with anybody that might know better or be able to set him down a more accurate path, or he wouldn't make statements. I talked about the fact that, what was it, 4 years ago, the Noam Road administration took the step of combining the Department of Agriculture with the Department of Energy and Natural Resources. And when we did that, it was a big deal. There was concern among some, but the farther we went into that, and the more things come into focus, the more we realized that was absolutely the right move. And the reason for that is nobody on the planet has a bigger vested interest in protecting our environment and our natural resources, and promoting a sustainable regulations that lead to a sustainable future in agriculture, our ability to feed the planet, then the producers that own the land and work the land and have been on that land for generations. They have an absolute desire and need to preserve that environment, those natural resources for the next generation and the next. And especially somebody in a position like the gentleman that wrote that article, for him to be in a leadership position, that was a very damaging thing to say. And rest assured, he's going to be set straight on a few of his issues in a very kind, civil way. but I will have conversations. Hopefully we can avoid any damage from that kind of rhetoric.
Do we have a final question?
Hello, Governor. We already know that you have proven that you can be the governor because you are the governor. Tell us what your favorite thing is about being our governor.
My favorite thing about being governor, that's really a pretty easy answer, because it was the same when I was a legislator, but it's just been magnified as governor. It is the people that give me the opportunity to meet are open for opportunities to. I told my staff when I got to be governor, I said, as soon as the session's over, I want to go on the road, and I want to tour for a couple weeks. And the couple weeks turned into a couple months, turned into 4 or 5 months, and it was just so amazing how much I learned, being born and raised in the state, just to rub shoulders with people and to meet so many just enthusiastic business owners and citizens and understand what their issues were, and then discover areas that we can make a difference. I think the first day of opportunity tour, I think it was the first business, was Silencer Central here in Sioux Falls, and talking to Brandon about regulatory issues that he was faced with shipping silencers. I said, well, rights and some of the overregulation. And I got one of my staff, and we talked it out. The next day, we shipped a letter to the ATF and explained to them that I don't know why that regulation was still on board, but it was antiquated and unnecessary. And a few weeks later, I get a letter from Brandon thanking us for the help, that they'd been notified by the ATF that that was changed. You know, those are the kind of things that just kind of keep you motivated, along with just having that line of communication. And for me, it also exemplifies the relationship that we now have with Washington, D.C. Since Trump has taken over the presidency, we're back on track for having open lines of communications, which has also been very exciting. Got to be pretty close allies with Brooke Rollins and a number of other officials in Washington, D.C. that I think are extremely valuable. So, long answer, sorry.
Thanks, everyone. We have one more thing for you. You're about to see the official unveiling of the governor's campaign launch video. So if you'll stick around just a moment, if the projector actually comes down.
Oh, you got the shades.
You have to run.
And it looks like the event has wrapped up over in Sioux Falls. Let's see. There we go. Like I mentioned before, Governor Rhoden just announced his intent to run for governor just this week. For future dates to keep in mind, primary election will take place June 2nd of next year, and the general election is set for November 3rd. Other big names in the race are Republicans Dusty Johnson, Toby Doden, and John Hanson. Democrat Robert Arnold is also running too. There are independents in the race, including Allison Renville and Terry Gleason. Again, general election set for November 3rd. Up next for the governor, he's gearing up to present his state budget proposal to the state legislature, and that'll be on December 2nd. And we're planning on bringing that to you live as well, here on Facebook, on Roku, and we'll definitely be covering it in our broadcast news that day. Thank you for joining me, and that's a wrap.